regulating the machine, global AI laws, and the impact of GDPR. Wow, this is a fun topic. First of all, I have to issue the big disclaimer. None of us went to law school, okay? We're not lawyers, so do not take this show as legal advice in any way, shape, or form. We're just talking heads who are going to laugh about what's going on. And really, it is kind of laugh because you might imagine that various legislators are trying to actually learn about AI. Well, they're not tech people like we are, and so their take on things is obviously going to be different, probably more fear-driven, I would say. But anyway, why does this matter? We are having very rapid technology advancement. I mean, clearly it is outpacing policy on a local and regional and global basis. This is something where legal frameworks just cannot keep up. It's very challenging for them. And it's kind of funny. I mean, if you're in the information security industry, at some point in your career, you've probably been involved in trying to craft policy for your organization at some level. And it's sort of a similar effort, right? You always fall back into this space of generalities and sort of less is more and very vague statements because, especially in technology, specific terms change all the time. Technology advances very rapidly, and this is very much true, probably exponentially true in the artificial intelligence space. So I don't know. I think I'm just going to pitch this to Bronwyn because she thought this would be a good idea. Did you feel the bus there, Bronwyn? Give us a little bit of foundational concepts here, if you would.
Well, one of the things about the whole foundational concepts, first you have to define what is AI regulation. You need to figure out who's going to be accountable and how does this interact with existing laws. And the other thing that's going on, of course, with everything related to AI is that not only is the technology evolving very quickly, but also the regulations are evolving very quickly. So, for example, when I first put together an outline for this podcast, we didn't have certain activities coming from the American government that basically gave artificial intelligence carte blanche to plow through intellectual property rights. And so it's really hard. Again, every single country is going to have its own laws. Every single organization is going to have its own implementations. GDPR is probably going to be the most clearly implemented set of regulations that will impact AI from a legal standpoint. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that the way GDPR was written was fairly clear in terms of the core issues that touch on AI. And I'm not talking just LLMs. I'm talking LLMs, I'm talking images, I'm talking video, the whole schmear. And so the issues about privacy, data privacy, consent, accountability, the right to be forgotten, those are all very clearly spelled out in GDPR. So if you're in the European Union, you're a lot better off than you might be in other parts of the world where that kind of definition about privacy and intellectual property has not already been put into place and implemented. And beaten on had use cases and what's the word? Not case studies, but where it actually becomes part of the history. Again, I'm not a lawyer either.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think, as a general rule, I think, a pretty good observation here. I'm saying it, so it's definitely a good observation, right? An observation that I have is that the United States tends to lead in a very capitalistic manner, and basically says, let's not squelch innovation, and we will always put innovation before regulation. Whereas Europe tends to come at it from the opposite perspective. They tend to put their regulatory foot first, and it's an open debate and question as to whether that squelches innovation. I tend to think it does, but that's just sort of the fact here. But I think that the experiences with GDPR have shown that it is applicable and it has worked in some areas. But then there's a lot of people that would give the counter of viewpoint that it is squelching innovation. It is probably overreaching. That's just the nature of it. So it's always comes with its good and its bad, I think, is my perspective on it. As we were coming into the show here, we were having a brief discussion about the fact that individual states within the United States are putting their foot forward on lots of different legislative efforts around artificial intelligence. And there is a pretty good resource out there. It is the National Conference on State Legislators, ncsl.org, that do comparisons on different state efforts to legislate. And they do have a page on their website specifically on artificial intelligence. And one of the things that I observed looking through that is the attempts in different states to legislate on artificial intelligence tend to be focused in particular areas of concern driven by either their citizens or their business. For example, there's, some states go all in on protecting children from deep fakes, for example, or protecting their citizens from deep fakes. Other legislation out there has gone more consumer protection. Some has gone in the direction of blockchain, right? And all under the same umbrella of artificial intelligence. So it's kind of a scattershot of stuff that is out there at the state-by-state layer. And I think that's it's an interesting and perhaps a little concerning thing because it's a very, very broad area. We know that artificial intelligence is a human paradigm shifting technology across all major knowledge worker industries in particular, and maybe even further. So it's such a broad impact of the technology. I think it's not surprising that the legislative efforts are also kind of equally broad and kind of scattershot as they individual entities try to get their arms around this. Well, I don't know, thoughts. I just want to throw it to Mr. Furman, seeing as he's been quietly listening and looking very pensive.
Looking very serious.
So, do you have any?
I'm trying out new camera angles here, so this one just has me like I'm just looking deep in thought, just slightly in this direction, like there's something going on right outside my window. Something.
Yeah.
So no, I agree. It is interesting looking through this. The page that you mentioned is seeing in the different states of what they are deciding is important to them to focus on for putting AI legislation into place. But I guess as I make that comment, it might not necessarily just be what's important to them, but also might be what's palatable within their state. I think a lot of states, entities are, feel like they should be doing something. That artificial intelligence is just, its use is exploding. Some people are kind of scared of it and the implications of it, and they just feel a need that they need to be doing something. But that's something that they're actually going to be able to do within, a state-by-state basis is largely going to depend on the state and the population that's there. And so, looking through this, you see some people who are, or some states who are kind of echoing what is more at the countrywide level, the federal level of looking at intellectual property rights and making sure that those aren't infringed upon, who actually owns the data. Others is much more, kind of most people could nod and agree with, in terms of that it's transparency things of, okay, what New York, for instance, here, in terms of being transparent about when you're making automated decisions, what are you using for that? What information is being used to do that? And what are the decisions that are actually being made? So I do think it is very interesting to see the different approaches and the different focuses that the different states are taking towards trying to get something into place. But then if you look further down on the page, you see that nearly every state is at least trying to do something. It's just a matter of whether or not they've actually passed it or not.
Yeah, you see some things in there I noticed that were focused on employment. Some things are focused on protection of students. Some things are focused on chatbots. Some things are focused on actual AI model building. It's just all over the map. What we're seeing. Brahman, I cut you off, so you had a thought before I.
Well, basically, what we're seeing in terms of how AI laws are being addressed on a state level versus the federal level, this is very common in the United States, and it's a carryover of how the nation was founded. Because originally the 13 colonies, they were like independent nations that came together to try and our legal system maintains that foundation that states have their own jurisdiction. They have their own ability to define who and what they are as an entity. And then at a certain point, then things wind up percolating up to a federal level. And so what we're seeing here is exactly that dynamic. And so what your observations about how the different emphases, I'm looking, and for some reason, it looks like, where was it? Not Missouri, it was Minnesota, for some reason, has a lot of health related stuff. And then other states are focusing more on criminal activities. And you nailed it. And like I said, this is a manifestation of how law works in the United States, which is not necessarily how it works in other countries. So for addressing all of this law on a global scale, I'm really glad I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, this is a tough nut, right?
Yeah.
It's going to take a lot of work and a lot of time, and then as we know, it's a very fast-moving, changing situation. So, all right. So, given that, let's pivot into information security as we should. Because we have a patchwork in regulation, and we have gaps, and we have no clear guidelines in some cases, what does that mean for us from a information security risk perspective? What do you think, Brian? What does that mean to us in our industry?
Yeah, so that's kind of a tough one. Kind of finding where that intersection is between these regulations and what it means from the information security standpoint. In terms of the types of tools that we might be able to use, or the types of tools that we run across as we're doing security assessments for companies, and just kind of seeing how these different regulations work their way into that security space. I think it would be interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I just get the feeling, and it's just off personal reflection, is the real answer is we just don't know. We know that we have organizations that are coming to us asking to assess their implementations of artificial intelligence technology deployment, and it's happening en masse. We know that almost every customer that we have, almost all the organizations we talk to, are going 2 feet first into artificial intelligence deployments, usually in the form of some sort of large language model with some sort of agency or agentic actions that are happening. And somewhere along the lines, there is organizational data involved in part of that process, and the laws that apply are not. It's not really clear right now. I think. I think there's also different audiences here. What I see across the different states is legislation that seems to apply to more of the public large language models and the various malfeasance or in terms of use of those public large language models, how that relates to individual organizational deployments is not very clear to me, because a lot of our organizations that are deploying large language models and agentic systems have a much narrower focus than these public LLMs. They have a specific use case. They have a need to do, let's say, a chatbot to service their own employees or a chatbot to service their own customers related to the industry that they're in. So I'm just not quite sure how the law applies to that versus what tends to be a lot of legislative development around the public side. At least that's kind of what I'm seeing. Thoughts?
Yeah. Well, I completely agree. I mean, we don't have anything yet in something similar to CFAA, Computer Fraud and Abuse Act, or PCI regulations, or HIPAA, or any of those very distinct, clear-cut things that when we're looking through the actual security aspect of AI implementations, that we really need to dig in, look after, and check, are they in compliance with whatever standard they're having us look at. We're still very immature, I think, in that aspect of these guidelines and these regulations. And at this point, we don't have those clear-cut guidelines for kind of how this stuff should be done. I mean, from a secure implementation in terms of how things should be architected, so that you're not opening up security risks within an organization, so that you're not creating a case where sensitive data can be retrieved or sensitive systems can be accessed. I mean, sure, from a security perspective, we know how to look at that and know how to mitigate those risks. But in terms of we need to be compliant with XYZ, we're not quite seeing that yet, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just sort of wondering some particular scenarios. I mean, let's say a local LLM deployment of an organization gets, jailbroken, gets its system prompt rewritten, then becomes inappropriate, amoral, potentially yielding illegal information out to its users in terms of responding to prompts, or maybe responding to, maybe it's been hacked such that it's got a problem with understanding which users are using it at that time. And, is there organizational liability there? I mean, I kind of wish we had a lawyer on hand to answer those questions, because, there's certainly potential for impact. If the LLM starts blurting out, here's how you build a bomb in your garage to an innocuous query, that employee may not be too happy, right?
Well,
at that particular moment.
And to make it even more difficult, okay, let's say that you're an organization, you've created your own LLM in order to service whatever population it is that's the res detra for the organization, but your AI is being hosted on AWS or on Azure. Now the waters get really muddy, because if it gets jailbroken, does that liability fall on Amazon or on Microsoft, or does it fall on the organization itself? And there's no way that the laws can anticipate what's going to happen, because there are new implementations and new ways. I mean, the agentic thing is only beginning. And here we are, we're taking these AIs, we're giving them agency, we're giving them permission to make actual decisions, implement actual changes. And how could any legal system anticipate that and come up with legislation when it's a tech that's 5 minutes old?
Yeah, it's interesting. So We don't even know where the technology is going. It's part of that discussion, right? There's another great resource out there if anybody's interested that I'm going to mention right now in terms of predicting the future and where we sit, and it's called AI-2027.com. Fantastic resource just to kind of look at some people in the industry, data scientists, kind of giving their viewpoint of where these things are going, and frankly, their fears. Right? There's a lot of people with a lot of concerns that know the technology in and out. So that always, that side always bothers me a little bit, because if they know the technology in and out and they're saying we don't know what's going to happen, it feels like we're sort of stumbling about, but we're still pouring money in and developing it, right? So anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, but it's worth investigating for those who are interested. In terms of design, if we talk about mitigation strategies and best practices and what companies need to do to kind of do their best in an evolving technology field where there is few and far between guidelines, I think, we come back to, embracing principles of least privilege, principles of privacy in the design, of trying to hold the highest ethical standards in the design. From a security perspective, definitely building in that consent and building in, and something that I've not heard about much, by the way, and I did talk to some of my customers recently about this, is building in the audit mechanisms so that when something does happen, there's a way to go back and find out what transacted, what was the prompt, what was the response, at what time did that occur, and who was involved in that. We do that for about everything else in information security. We talk about audit logging and the need to have that sort of forensic camera viewpoint. And in all of the implementation rush that I'm hearing around artificial intelligence, I'm not hearing people talk about audit and logging much at all. And I don't know, am I missing something? But thoughts on that one?
Auditing is sexy, so people are talking about it.
Not. Yeah, there are some risk management frameworks out there as well. There is the NIST AI risk management framework. It's a pretty good attempt. It's kind of tactical. Last time I looked at it, you can sort of click through and sort of build like little scenario kinds of things and look at it. So that's a good one. As Bronwyn mentioned earlier, the EU has a fairly comprehensive AI legislative effort, and it's not a bad idea to look at what they've got. I haven't read it. Knowing the EU, it's probably very, very lengthy. So, all right. So, any other thoughts on this one before we close it out? We're about 23 minutes in or so here.
I think we covered a lot of it here. I think just one of the key points is it's just in terms of laws and regulations. It's a difficult thing, especially with how quickly this field is still evolving, and how, AI in itself isn't new. It's been around. AI itself has been around for a while, but the rapid adoption of it, as well as the way in which we're using it, is new to everyone and is really coming to the forefront of what people are paying attention to. And so with that both being new and with how quickly it's moving, it is going to be something that's going to be difficult to regulate, and especially differentiating it between existing laws and how do we need to look at AI differently from kind of what we already have in place. And so I think it will be pretty interesting to see within the coming years of just how people go about it.
Yeah. A couple of other things that we should mention, aside from the state and local level, which we've talked about a lot, There is an executive order that the president has issued entitled Removing Barriers to American Leadership in Artificial Intelligence. That actually goes right down the line of what I was talking about. That executive order is more focused on accelerating innovation than it is the safety, ethics, and more law concerns that the individual states have. So we're seeing kind of a bipolar approach a little bit there, but hopefully we'll see some progress and it will come back together at some point. All right. Well, I think that's about all we've got. Any closing thoughts from you, Bronwyn?
No, I think that we've covered everything as well as it can be. Just stay tuned for more developments in this space as the technology and the laws around it continue to evolve.
All right. That sounds good. As we publish this one, if there are any lawyers out there that wish to make constructive comments, we totally welcome those. And again, I will say we are just talking heads here. We are definitely not lawyers, so be kind to us, but we definitely would love to see feedback. And with that, let's close the show out. And I will say happy prompting to everybody. Keep on prompting. I don't know. I haven't kind of landed on my catchphrase, but certainly be careful out there, and we'll see you next time.